This is your Literature and Class Live review for the story Animal Farm. I just want to go quickly over some of the characters, main points, and that sort of thing for Animal Farm. This picture that you see here is actually from the animated movie of Animal Farm. It's actually a really, really good version. If you would like to sit down and watch it, I highly recommend it. And you can kind of see the outline of Comrade Napoleon up there at the top. And this cracks me up, this little thing. Keep calm and read Animal Farm. Because really, Animal Farm is an incredibly influential book, especially when discussing communism and the Soviet Revolution. So first, some background information about the story. When you go to read Animal Farm, you have to understand that this is an allegory, which means everything that happens in the story is symbolic of something else. So when we have the animals rebelling against Jones, that's symbolic, or it represents the Russian Revolution and the overthrowing of the Tsars, the Bolshevik Revolution. So you have to keep that in mind and always be looking for those connections, that everything that happens in the story has a deeper meaning. You can't take Animal Farm at face value. Now, I know that makes reading Animal Farm pretty difficult. Some people find it less enjoyable because they're always looking for deeper meaning, but once you find the deeper meaning, it actually really turns the story about a farm into something much bigger. So, starting with George Orwell, he was a British author. Wasn't super popular when Animal Farm came out. It was a hot-button story because it was right after World War II that Animal Farm was published, and people didn't like it. The Russians, specifically the Soviets and the Communists, had just helped the world win World War II. They had helped defeat Hitler. They had stormed Berlin. So really, there was kind of a popular feeling about the Soviet Union at this time. And so initially, this book did not do so hot. Orwell believed in socialism. He absolutely believed in socialism, and this idea that there could be equality if handled correctly. He definitely did not believe in communism. He called it the Soviet myth, because people would look at the Soviet Union and communism and say, look, socialism works in Russia. It works there. But Orwell knew that to be a farce, and that's what inspired him to write Animal Farm, was this idea that what's happening in the Soviet Union is not socialism, it's a farce. And so, again, you kind of have to understand the background of the Soviet Union. Before the Russian Revolution, which happened in the 1900s, early 1900s, Russia was a monarchy. We had the Tsar, Tsar Nicholas II. Any of you who are familiar with the story of Anastasia and how the family dies, that's what was happening in Russia at the time. So we had the Tsars, a monarchy, overthrown during the Bolshevik Revolution, which instated communism. Okay. This was kind of propagated by Vladimir Lenin, who was the initial leader of the Communist Party in the Soviet Union. Remember, Russia changed its name to the Soviet Union after the revolution. Lenin dies very suddenly, and Leon Trotsky and Joseph Stalin kind of emerge and become the forefront two leaders of communism in the Soviet Union. This doesn't work out so well. For those of us who have read the book Animal Farm, we know that doesn't work out so well, having two leaders, and things kind of turn south for Trotsky. So quickly going over the characters, we have Old Major, who only appears briefly in the first chapter to discuss his vision of animalism. He is reminiscent of Vladimir Lenin, who has this grand concept for socialism in Russia, and before his dream can be realized, dies. We have Snowball and Napoleon. All three of these folks are pigs, and become important later on. We have Boxer, who is our very, very powerful workhorse, who really kind of holds the farm together. We have Squealer, who is a pig, and as his name suggests, he has interesting speaking ability. We have Clover, who is another horse, Benjamin, the stubborn old donkey, who plays an incredibly important role in this story. We have Mr. Jones, who is our farmer, who is overthrown. He is representative of Tsar Nicholas. And finally, we have the dogs. Not specifically Jessie and Bluebell, but later on the dogs that Napoleon trains to become his army. So these are definitely the major characters. There are a lot more characters than just these, but these are definitely the big players. And finally, just a brief overview of the plot. We have the story opening with Jones, Farmer Jones. He neglects his animals. He forgets to feed them. He gets drunk a lot. He does not treat them well at all. And so this kind of leads to the animals meeting in the barn because Old Major has had a vision, a dream, and he wants to share with the whole farm, and it's very important that everybody come. And the animals kind of arrange themselves, and even in this initial meeting, we get an idea of certain characters and what they're like. For example, Clover gathers up next to, I believe, ducklings, and they come and cuddle up with her during the meeting, and so we kind of get a little bit of everybody's character via the way that they're arranging themselves. And Old Major shares this vision of animalism, and he says, we can't work under man. We're being oppressed. Any man who says that he cares about his animals is a liar, and it's very much, if you replace man with capitalism and animals with kind of the low-class people, lower-class folks, it's very much the same thing as communism, what they're talking about. And it's very, very interesting to swap those two out and see the similarities between Lenin and Old Major. Finally, not too long after, the animals rebel, and it's very interesting. The book notes that when Old Major talked about it, he said, maybe not in our lifetime, maybe not for hundreds of years, but the book notes it happened rather quickly, and not pre-planned. It just kind of happened one day, and it surprised all the animals, but they were super happy with it. And they go on to establish the the principles of animalism and equality, and what those mean. They sum it up in approximately 9 laws, and they decide, everybody's going to learn to read, they're going to be able to read their names, and they're going to be able to read the commandments, and this is incredibly important to the preservation of our society. Well, not all the animals can read or choose to read, and so it makes that concept of preservation of society a little bit difficult. Snowball goes about creating committees and trying to get everyone organized, and Napoleon kind of goes about leading. We have this idea come to the forefront from Snowball about the windmill. He says, look, we're going to build a windmill that's going to provide electricity, all the barns will be heated, we'll have light, it'll be really fantastic. And Napoleon promptly pees all over it. Literally marches into the little barn where he has his plans and pees on them. And so we kind of see the very beginning of the hostilities between Snowball and Napoleon, and the hostilities are very obvious. Walking into somebody's office and peeing on their paperwork is effectively what happens. And it just kind of continues until, incredibly suddenly, Snowball is run off the farm. And it's really quite a traumatic scene when you read it, of, this pig being chased, and barely escaping with his life. Leon Trotsky was able to escape the Soviet Union, but was later assassinated in South America. So we do have this similarity here. And suddenly the story takes a very quick turn for dark and oppressive times under Napoleon. Free speech kind of goes away. Work quadruples, it seems like. They're fed less. One of the items that always kind of makes me giggle is they talk about, we're going to work on Sundays, but it's voluntary. But anybody who doesn't volunteer gets less food. So it's kind of one of those ironic things where they're making it feel like you have free will by volunteering, but if you don't volunteer, you're not going to eat as much, so you'll starve a little bit. And really, this is very symbolic of what was happening in the Soviet Union after Stalin took over. And the the animals don't really question Napoleon, and especially Boxer. Bless him for his unwavering faith. He says, if Napoleon says it, it must be true. If Napoleon says it, he must be true. Even when it seems like, or even when Napoleon has him attacked, he still has this unwavering faith for Napoleon. And even upon his death, he's very loyal to Napoleon. Throughout this whole thing, we have Benjamin the Donkey, who I think is a fantastic character, saying he doesn't care what happens. Because he knows that under animalism, under Jones, it doesn't matter, life will be terrible. And so he is very much our kind of voice of reason. He doesn't want to read, but he will when he has to. We know he's definitely one of the smartest animals that's on the farm, because he knows exactly what's going on, but he's not willing to say anything because he knows what will happen to him if he does. And all of it kind of leads into this very not-so-shocking ending, where we have the pigs putting on the clothes of the men, walking around on their bare feet, holding whips in their trotters, and effectively becoming Jones. And it's really amazing. The final line, I think, is incredibly powerful, where it says, I think it's Clover, who looked from man to pig, from pig to man, and then back again, and she couldn't tell the difference anymore. And I think leaving it on that note is so hugely powerful. And again, replacing kind of the pigs with, Stalin and communism, and replacing man with the czars and saying, we looked from the czars to Stalin, and from Stalin to the czars, and we can't tell the difference. Our life isn't any better. We're still starving. We're still hungry. Things are still bad. And this brilliant idea, this beautiful revolution that we had in mind, didn't happen. And so it really is kind of a tragic ending, but not so surprising. And then finally, my favorite line in this whole novel, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others, is such a fantastic concept and commentary on communism, because that really is what communism and socialism in the Soviet Union delved into, as they say, everybody's equal, but some of us are a little more equal and deserve more rights. So really, this kind of grand socialist idea devolved into a big old mess. So there you go. That's a brief literary overview of Animal Farm by George Orwell. I packed a whole novel into about 10 minutes, so I highly recommend you read it. Watch the animated film if you'd like. It is fantastic. There are audio versions available of Animal Farm, so you can have it read to you while you follow along. It's a fantastic novel, and I hope you enjoy it.